Welcome to PhD with Women on IT, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD, Positivity Hack Delivered, will be by Dr. Tracy Brower. Topic: how to find a job fast. Powerful techniques to bring you into the hiring spotlight. Episode 122 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you are trying to find a job. First, let me remind you what's been happening in the world of technology and our community. Giovanna Galeo Malaga, big cheers to you for taking charge on the stage with your exceptional keynote, The Wizardry of Project Management at DevFest Pescara 2023. I hope you're gonna speak at more events because we need more female leaders who are on the spotlight, not just when they are looking for jobs. A round of applause to our former PhD guest, AWS authorized instructor, Tasha Penwell, as she's been selected to share her awesome computer science expertise at their Higher Educational Technology Conference in February 2024. We are looking forward to your exciting speech. Exciting news for our former PhD guest, Rachel Coward, as she has been invited to speak at Live Wired in celebration of Wired's 30th birthday. We are looking forward to hearing your exciting development in the world of gaming. And my special thanks go to Mark Whitley, a leading City of London politician and passionate advocate for the space economy. Follow him to hear about all the amazing opportunities in the space industry that can benefit both Londoners and people around the world. Now let's go back to our topic, how to find a job fast. Powerful techniques to bring you into the hiring spotlight. Embarking on the journey to find a job can be a challenging and time-consuming endeavor. The process often feels like a roller coaster of emotions, from excitement to frustration, from waiting for that phone call to happen, then to waiting to another phone call to happen, and it goes on and on. According to data, 70% of new roles within 3 months after layoffs. 81% of recruitment professionals struggle to fill roles. 71% of job seekers find the process complex. Therefore, we have brought our second-time guest, Dr. Tracy Brower, a renowned PhD sociologist studying work-life balance and work-life fulfillment and happiness. She's an author, award-winning speaker, and the vice president of Workplace Insights for Steelcase and a senior contributor to Forbes and Fast Company. Don't miss this opportunity to ask your questions and get your job ready. Tracy, we've had the pleasure to chat to you just last year or over a year ago, and it was a very different dynamic. It was a post-COVID world. We still had to manage a lot of paperwork. So I'm curious, where in the world are you? Are you in the same place or somewhere new?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for having me back. I so appreciated our conversation last time and love the work that you're doing. Yes, I'm in the same place and like everybody else in a completely different place. I love the way that you worded that because it kind of has two answers. I'm in Michigan in the United States, same place I was before, but we've all learned so much and I think we've shifted so much and things are going fast again. And so we have this moment to figure out how to either keep up or set a boundary or manage it ourselves.
We are going to set a boundary and make sure that you are going to, whoever is listening to us, get job ready or be able to pitch yourself wherever you are meeting somebody new or whenever you have a chance to impress somebody. Because job seeking is a really, I would call it a sales pitch, isn't it, Dr. Tracy?
Yes, absolutely. And your language about a roller coaster is so right on as well. It's an emotional effort and it's a lot of effort. One of the first things I say is that the job market is really, really strong. You know, there are really high percentages of people who say that they find their job in 3 months or so. There are lots and lots of hiring leaders saying they're challenged to find the right people. But the process is complex, and lots of people say they wish they had started earlier. So it's a lot of work. There's a lot of emotion, but oh my gosh, it's so worth it in terms of you making that investment and the outcomes that come forward as a result.
Well, I don't know where to start, Dr. Tracy, because there are so many things we can do to improve our chances. But where do we start if we want to look for a job?
Yeah, there are so many good starting points that you can really think about. And I think the first thing you can do is really think about networking. It is absolutely true that we hire people we know, or we hire people who we know that, somebody else knew. You can really, really think about reaching out to people you know. Reaching out to people you know and asking them to introduce you to others, making sure that you're clear with your network, that you're looking for something else. You may, if you're in the middle of a job now and you need a little confidentiality, that's really, really fair. And you might want to ask for some anonymity or confidentiality as you're doing that search. But in general, a really good place to start is strengthening all those connections. Reach out and have coffee with somebody, reach out and have a virtual meeting with somebody, reach out and ask what opportunities might be available. Really think about, too, how you're connecting through asking for introductions, asking for clues. Here's one last thing, and then back to you. Interestingly, data suggests that we find our best opportunities on the outer circles of our networks. The people on our inner circles that we know best often have access to the same information we do. So when we reach beyond our inner circle to our next circle out, or our tertiary circles of connections, those may be where people know about opportunities that we may not also be aware of. So start with networking.
Start with networking, and that's a great opportunity for me to mention our chat with Kelly Howie, who talked about networking, how to network during pandemic world, but also how to network online, because the pandemic world was very much online and not so much offline opportunity to make connections. Now, we talk about networking. How do we approach networking right?
I think a really important part of approaching networking well is to think about what you're offering to the network. Like, a lot of times we may think about, ooh, I want to get something. I want to get a job. I want to get a contact. I want to get an introduction. But I think when we really focus on building meaningful relationships, that's a really good place to start as well. There's a great quote that talks about how the real value in networking isn't greed, but generosity. So think about deepening those relationships and getting to know people. This is related to another aspect of finding a job fast, and that is really looking for a good match in terms of the job. Like, you know how sometimes you have a role and you want to expand to something that's quite different and is a wonderful reach that might be adjacent to your field. That's great. Sometimes that can take a little bit longer. If your goal is finding something really, really quickly, then finding a really good match that's more natural and more obvious to recruiters or to hiring leaders can also be a good idea. So as you're thinking about networking effectively, you want to think about who are the people who are in the roles where there might be a really good match for you. So that would be another tip in terms of making it happen quickly.
Another tip to make it happen quickly, also looking who is hiring at the moment or who is opening new positions. However, if we hear nothing back, do we take it personally?
This is a really tough one. There is research that lots of people are getting ghosted right now. And it's interesting because it's almost like a tale of two worlds, because hiring leaders in very significant percentages say they struggle to find people to hire. And then people who are looking for jobs in very significant percentages say that sometimes people aren't super responsive. And I think what we want to do, absolutely to your question, is not take it personally. Number one, people are all busy and overwhelmed right now. And lots of our channels are overwhelmed. We get so many emails, we get so many LinkedIn messages, we get so many DMs and IMs. So don't take it personally. Know that there's an overwhelm factor. And the other thing I think is to be really persistent. I wrote an article not too long ago, a different one in Forbes, that talked about how to follow up graciously, how to follow up with panache, I think was something like that in the title. And what you want to do is reach out consistently, be really clear about how your background matches what they're looking for in the position. Those are really, really good ideas. Another thing you can think about if you're being ghosted or if you're not getting the follow up that you want is to really cast a broad net in terms of what you're looking for. You know, people hiring leaders are looking for a match in terms of your skills and capabilities and in terms of your potential, but they're also looking for a match and an add to their culture. And so you want to find the right fit for yourself. They want to find a good fit for you. So when you cast a broad net, that's also really, really smart in terms of how we think about our responses to being ghosted. It's a lot easier to be ghosted when you feel like you've got a lot of other oars in the water. That one I didn't hear back from, but I've got lots of other things happening. That's a little easier emotionally.
Absolutely, much easier. And also, one thing I need to remind you, all our lovely viewers, our listeners, positive attitude is half success. Now, let's approach positively our lovely listeners. We've got Mary, who says, excited to see Dr. Tracy again in PhD. So are we, Mary? Thank you. And Jane is also listening to us. Hello, Beata and Dr. Tracy. Nice topic to listen to help others. I have a friend that realized networking too late and don't know how to start. She's a very introverted person. Any advice how to start?
This is such a good one. Networking is really hard. I know I'm a fellow introvert, so, we all need these skills, right? I think one thing we can do is start small. And when I say start small, start with people that you know. Maybe you only know a couple of people, but start with them and get their advice about career. Ask them questions about what opportunities they might know of. Ask them if they could introduce you to someone else. So think small in terms of your inner circle and then expanding one step at a time from there. Also, think small in terms of what you're asking for. You're not asking for a long-term mentorship relationship. You're not asking for someone to hire you. Start by just asking someone what kinds of advice they might have for someone in your situation in terms of your career. Ask them if they might be willing to have a virtual coffee, right? That's a small ask versus a lunch or a longer meeting. So start small in terms of those. And also, I'd say the third thing as an introvert and as you're getting started is to remind yourself that most people actually like to be asked. I think we can feel uncomfortable sometimes and feel like, oh, I don't want to take somebody's time, or I don't want to ask, I don't want to be in a position. But a lot of times people like to give their advice. They're flattered when you ask. They appreciate spending the time and giving advice. So that's another way to kind of talk to yourself about it and to increase your comfort and positivity with it. We have to wait a minute for unmuting. There we go. Yay.
Oh, yes, that's me. I'm trying to help this AC. Aircon is running very hard here. So, here is the study I just mentioned. A Hewlett-Packard study showed that women apply when they meet at least 90% of job qualifications, whereas men when they have 60% of qualifications required. So, and since you mentioned talking about starting small, I wonder, how do we build that confidence to actually not only starting small, but also think big about ourselves?
This is brilliantly said. Not only start small, but think big. One of the things that we know is that when you're about 70% ready for a job, that is a great time to go for it. Stretching, facing challenges, learning new things, really applying yourself in a situation where you don't have it all figured out is super correlated with happiness. And so when you put yourself out there, when you take the initiative, that's a really good idea. So while that research is so relevant in terms of what you were just sharing, women wait until they're 90% qualified, you can actually go ahead and take a risk, put yourself forward, take initiative when you're about 70% of the way there, because you send a message about your initiative, about your capability, about your proactivity. You send a message about your potential and where you're going, and employers really appreciate that. The other thing is there's some really great research on being proactive. I just wrote an article about this in Forbes as well. If you did a search on proactive Brower Forbes, you would find it. There's some wonderful research Thomas Bateman has actually done. When you are proactive, it actually contributes to your well-being and it contributes to your career success. So taking those steps are absolutely relevant in terms of where you'll go. They are also relevant in terms of your well-being, because when we take initiative and take action toward our own success, it is good for our cognitive, emotional, and even our physical well-being. So remind yourself that you can do it. Remind yourself that you are likely to be successful, even if you don't have all the skills yet today. Remind yourselves that a really big part of putting yourself out there is the message and the positive message that you send to employers. So the takeaway here is go for it. You will advantage yourself. You can do it. And just the fact that you're going for it has its own advantages.
Well, asking a friend is also very useful. So, getting a feedback, how to get that feedback and not feel offended if there are some things that needs a lot of improvement.
Yeah, this is a great strategy for finding a job fast. You want great skills at telling your story. You want to really plan for the key points you're going to make in an interview, the key points that you're going to put forward in your cover letter, which is still a thing, the key ways that you want to emphasize your capabilities in your resume. And getting advice from a friend is really smart. I actually did another article on how to find a mentor and how to use role models. And when you look to that circle of friends and family for advice and for feedback, it's very effective. The reason is that you have a level of trust built up with folks like that. And so they can give you the really, really hard feedback. And one of the tips in looking for feedback from the people in your network and the people that you're close to is to let them know what you're looking for. Like, hey, tell me about my approach, or tell me about my handshake, or tell me if I'm expressing my story both fully enough and concisely enough, right? Like, be really specific with them about the feedback that you want. And then really give them permission to be tough, because they'll still be gentle because they're your friend or your family, but give them permission to be tough, and then be really, really open to that feedback. The other thing about feedback is that you get to choose what makes sense to you, right? Like, somebody might say, oh, this didn't work for me, but it may actually be the right answer. It may be your best. It may be a good match to the employer. So also give yourself permission to both take that feedback in after making yourself vulnerable, really think about how you'll improve, and give yourself permission to decide, I'm going to let this one go. So those are some really, really good ideas in terms of bringing that friend into the mix, bringing that family member into the mix, bringing that colleague into the mix who can give you really, really good input.
Well, relating to your article, I wanted to talk about it, tapping into the right opportunities, because so many times when we had meetings, whether virtual or in-person meetings of women on IT community, I've heard so many women wanted to enter the technology field, but they just didn't have any experience. And you can't get a job because you have no experience. You can't have experience because you can't get a job. So how to break that cycle?
Yes. Oh, this is a good one too. One of the ways to break that cycle is to get experience through an internship. Sometimes women are especially drawn to returnships. I did an article on that as well, where maybe you've been out of the job market a while and you want a returnship. So that's actually a thing in terms of employers who are bringing people back, maybe on a 6-month or a year-long basis to try things out. That's another good one. Volunteering is another brilliant way to get some experience. So, volunteer with a nonprofit in your community, volunteer with an organization in your community, and then you'll have that absolutely relevant experience to add. Another way that you can really, really think about finding the right opportunity is to absolutely look at what industries are hot and what jobs are hot. In the article that we're talking about today, I actually have some data that you can link to. The hottest industries right now are tech, of course, with this audience, healthcare, management, marketing, and law. And so those may shift and they may be different for your region, but it's a really good idea to look at what industries are hot. And then you can also look at what jobs are hot, and they tend to be related to those. So you want a job that's going to be the right fit for you. But if you're finding something quickly, if you look for those fastest growing jobs, that's a really, really good strategy. And when you're going broad in your search, make sure that you're doing a really nice job of making it easy for the recruiters or for the hiring leaders. Make it easy in terms of using the verbiage from the job description in your resume, using the description and the language in the description and referencing some of those same words when you're in the interview. Make it really easy for people to connect the dots because, again, they're overwhelmed and you know you best. So you can help connect the dots in terms of what you bring and what you've studied about the job description or about the organization. Those are ways that you can really find the right match for yourself.
Well, that sounds like a full-time job before you get a job.
Yes, that is so well said. It is a full-time job to find a job. It takes lots of energy. I think that's actually another tip. And that is what you put in is what you get out. So if your goal is to find a great job, find a great match, and do that really, really quickly, if you put yourself into it full throttle, you'll be more likely to get out of it more quickly as well. The other thing that's true, sometimes people ask, should I quit my job so that I can take a full-time job in finding a job? Hopefully not. You may choose to do that, and there may be good reasons for it. But in general, it's easier to find a job if you have a job. So lots of us know this. I was actually just with a mom about my age recently, and she had a young Gen Z entering the workforce. And this person, her daughter, was being really, really picky about what job she was going to take, and was it the perfect job, and was it the job that had the perfect pay and all that. And the truth is that it's actually easier to find a job when you have a job. And sometimes it's really smart to start somewhere. When something seems like it could be mostly right or much right, go ahead, take the job, learn from it, understand it, and then you can always build from there. And when you're in that new role, you have a lot to learn. So use that new role as an opportunity for learning and growing and developing, and give yourself that opportunity. So invest the time. Know it's going to be a big investment, and then let that pay off by taking a role and taking a chance with a role.
Well, it's very interesting what you're saying, because it reminds me what Oprah Winfrey once said. By finding what I don't want to do in the future, I developed my idea what I want to do. So quite often you have to do a lot of things you don't enjoy doing before you actually start your journey. And also another pointer, I think another benefit of starting a job small is actually building your network, having this opportunity to have working environment, have some people to talk, and have that bright future figured out much easier.
Yes, so true. Two things to add about that. That point is really well taken. One, we we tend to choose jobs based on our personality characteristics. This is not rocket science, right? Like the people who go into a teaching role are different than people who tend to go into an engineering role or a healthcare role, for example. But the thing that is relevant about that to us is that when you have similar personality sets within a job, that makes it often a great place to make friends, to build relationships, to really connect with colleagues. Statistically, we really appreciate people who are different from us. Statistically, we're very likely to make friends and have strong relationships with people who are very similar to us. And so, our profession, the jobs that we choose, and the roles that we do tend to be a nexus for us to find people who are similar to us that we can really connect with. And that makes them great additions to our network as well. The other thing to think about related to work and what you're doing and what you're choosing to do is the difference between the meaning of work and the meaning in work. Like working, the act of showing up absolutely has value, right? We're contributing to our community. We are expressing our skills and capabilities. No matter what our work is, there's value in showing up for each other. That's the meaning that work itself can have. And then sometimes we have roles where we feel like there's meaning in the role itself. I was talking to a bank manager, and she said one of the things that she does is frequently she'll work with somebody who's lost their spouse, right? They've been married a really long time, and their spouse has been doing all the banking, and they're not even sure how to balance a checkbook. And so she will sit with that person and teach them over time. They'll come back week after week and learn about how to balance a checkbook and how to think about their finances. And she finds that super, super meaningful. So that is the meaning in work. So sometimes you'll do work that is meaningful because you're showing up, because you're contributing to your colleagues and contributing to your team. And sometimes the work itself will have intrinsic meaning for you as well. Each of those are really valuable conditions. And so we can think about that. Finding a job and either doing it because it's meaningful to get off the couch and show up for other people, and or because the job itself is especially interesting to us.
I just stumbled upon one sentence in your article. Relationships can be hard. Can we delve into that and try to ease the hardship of relationship, especially that you claim to be introvert?
Yeah, right. How we interact is sometimes a skill, right? Um, I think, yeah, relationships can be hard. Like we have to invest in relationships, and relationships are a place where we are challenged by somebody's differences of opinion. We're challenged by differences in style. We're challenged by people who push back on us, and those are actually really strengths in relationships. And, we've got this narrative right now that work should be easy street, right? It's, if we encounter any challenge, if we're frustrated at work, maybe it's not the right thing, right? Work should be all easy all the time. And that's actually not true at all. Like things that are worthwhile are usually hard. They usually encompass some stress, some challenge. When we work hard, that can be challenging, but it pays off for us. When we have a great relationship with somebody, it's hard, but it's a payoff. Sometimes parenting can be challenging, right? When you're learning something new, it can be really challenging, but oh my gosh, the rewards and the payoffs are a big deal. So that's what I mean by relationships can be hard, right? Like they can challenge us, but when we invest in creating a meaningful relationship, that's important to our physical, cognitive, and emotional health. And this is true whether we're an introvert or an extrovert. Extroverts may need more diverse kinds of friends, more contact with friends, more frequency in their relationships and interactions. Introverts may need less on that continuum, but we all need some level of connectedness. In fact, there's a study out of Brigham Young University that suggests that having one or two close friends is more important to health outcomes than your habits around diet, exercise, or alcohol, and on par with your habits around smoking. So things like cancer and heart disease and depression and anxiety and even longevity are affected by having one or two close friends. And this is relevant to our discussion about what job you have, because your work can absolutely be a source for friendship. You see people over time, you collaborate on both task and relationship, you see the ups and downs that someone goes through, and you have continuity in that relationship over time. So work can be a really important place that we feel connected. Even if we're not BFFs with the people that we're working with, that's okay. We still know that somebody's paying attention to whether we're showing up every day, either literally or on camera.
Absolutely, we need to show up. And also, I think since we are talking about relationship and hardship, I have to mention negotiation about money, because after all, as you mentioned, it's transactional, right? It's at the end of the day, they want to invest in us, and we want to make sure that they get the good outcome.
Yes. Yes, it's so true. And we humans have an instinct toward reciprocity. There was a really interesting study that looked at 60 different societies, 60, developed and developing societies, and found that there are kind of 7 moral rules that we share. They're things like look out for your family, look out for your friends, be respectful of those with greater expertise or status. And reciprocity was one of those moral rules, quote unquote, that we share as well. This is our instinct to give when we get. So there's been some really interesting sociological research. If you are given a little mint or something when you get the check at the restaurant, you're more likely to leave a bigger tip. When somebody gives to you, you're more likely to feel like you want to give back. At work, the way that works is that when we have a great leader who's, giving us recognition, when we have a great work experience that our employer has invested in, when we have an employer that maybe provides growth or development opportunities, all of those things influence us to give more back in terms of our discretionary effort, in terms of the brilliance that we put into doing our best all the time. And this has a relationship to money as well. And there's that balance where you want to absolutely negotiate for the best package that you can. Think really holistically about the employee value equation. It's not just the money you're making, it's also the growth opportunities you're going to get. It's the benefits, it's the vacation, it's the flexibility. It's where you are in your life stage in terms of what value looks like for you. When your early life stage, value might look like growing your career. When your midlife stage, extra value might look like flexibility. When your later life stage, extra value might look like opportunities to mentor or develop others, or have a flexible off ramp as you start to get ready to take an exit. And so think about the value as you're negotiating. And as you're negotiating, take a strong position in terms of what you're going to bring today and what you're going to bring in the future. A lot of times when we're looking for jobs, we're thinking about the match today. Your employer is thinking about your match today and your match tomorrow. They want people that they can invest in who are going to pay off for the business, who are going to deliver for the business over the long term. So in your negotiations, you can be articulate about the value you're bringing today and the value you're bringing tomorrow. And you can be really clear about the whole package that you're negotiating for. So those are just some thoughts on your negotiation question. It's a good one.
It's a good one, but also, again, we are coming back to the full job. When you're looking for a job, definitely you need to check what kind of brackets you're facing. So don't start with just some numbers on top of your head. Just look through what is available in your area right now, what could be negotiated before you even start negotiating. Now, Tracy, I guess that leaves me with a question to when we are through the negotiation stage and we are potentially going to get that job. And I think about that first time when you come to the office and you think, oh my goodness, there is so much to learn and I'm not sure whether I can learn. And, there is also some colleagues that I need to make sure that I have good relationship with. How to start your first day in the office with the good food.
Yes, exactly. How do you put your best foot forward? How do you hit the ground running? This is so important. And I think one of the things we can do is think about balancing the value that you're bringing and the way that you are both deferential and humble. So you want to be able to put a great foot forward. You want to be able to be articulate and make a contribution in a meeting, but you also want to really, really focus on listening, on learning, on asking questions. And people will really, really appreciate that. Sometimes I think we can have a landmine when we start a new job. We feel like we want to prove ourselves. We're like, I gotta right away do something that they're gonna like, right? And actually we can give ourselves a little more space than that. They've hired you because they value you. They've hired you because you have a background they believe will add value. And now they want to give you the opportunity to learn. So I think it's really less about, oh my gosh, I've got to prove myself, and more about really being open and asking lots of questions. That's one. And you made a great point about really starting off strong with your relationships. Look for people that you want to have one-on-ones with. Ask them questions, not just about your job, but about the culture, about the organization, about their lessons learned. Make sure that you're really, really focusing on connecting with people in those one-on-ones. Also, really make sure that you're kind of checking the boxes on all the things, right? You have all that paperwork to do, but then also all those kind of foundational classes that our employers want us to go through. Get through those early. And then really look for opportunities to potentially shadow or, jump into a meeting where you don't necessarily have a contribution to make, but you have a lot to learn. You're learning contextually. So think about 3 areas that you want to be learning. One is learning your job from your coworkers, from the people who will be recipients of your deliverables, from your boss. You want to be learning relationships, creating that network, doing those one-on-ones, really starting to get to know people around you. And thirdly, you want to learn about context. What are the values of the organization? What's the culture of the organization? What goes around here? What's the history of the organization? Really, really focus on that contextual element. And if you focus on those 3 elements, job, people, and context, that can really, really give you a good basis to hit the ground running so you can make meaningful contributions and then also balance that with humility and asking lots of questions.
Asking lots of questions, listening. And since we are listening to our listeners, here is a question from Natalie. Natalie Lianto. Great article, Dr. Tracy. You mentioned the importance of tailoring resumes and cover letters. How to customize application materials for different opportunities?
Right. This is part of what makes it time consuming, right? So you want to customize in terms of the language that you use. So if there are certain words or skills on a job description, make sure you have those show up in your resume. That's one. Another way that you want to customize is with the way that you emphasize the kinds of skills and capabilities that you have. So if you're applying for a job that's heavily technical, make sure that you're emphasizing those technical skills. If you're applying for a job that's more managerial, you may have the same job history, but you're going to, in your bullets, you're going to emphasize the leadership roles that you had and the initiative that you took and the way that you informally led the team, even if you didn't have direct responsibility. So the ways that you're going to customize have to do with the words that are used in the job description, but also the character and nature of the job. The other way that you can customize is by thinking about the culture of the organization. So you're going to do some research. Maybe an organization is kind of a take no prisoners, all about results kind of organization. Or maybe an organization is all about more of a gentle approach, or a steward leadership approach, which is still about results, but then also about kind of a culture that's very people centric. You can use language in your job description or your cover letter or your interview that picks up on some of those cultural nuances. If it's a get it done culture, all about results culture, be ready with your results, with your stats, with all of the quantitative ways that you made a difference. If it's an organization that's really, really focused on people, be really ready to talk about your people centricity, your respect for your colleagues, the great work the team did, how you loved being a team player, and these are the ways you together came together to deliver results. That's the third way that you can be really specific about it. In terms of really customizing your materials, and then also the way you present yourself and the way you present your story. Thank you for that question. I really, really think that's helpful.
I'm also very thankful. However, I have to say, Natalie, I hope you're not talking about it seriously. I hope you will stay with us. I mean, Natalie's been helping me with our social media efforts, and I would be very, very sad to see her leaving. So now there is a time to bring a quotation. Do not wait to strike till the iron is hot, but make it by striking, William Butler Yeats said. So we are trying to make your iron hot today with Dr. Tracy Brower, who has written a couple of articles in Forbes and Fast Company, and I definitely recommend her work, her interviews, also interview with us about happiness at work, and also a book which I believe is going to be released again. Dr. Tracy, can you tell us about your latest project?
Yes, thanks for asking. I really appreciate it. So my first book was called Bring Work to Life. My second book was called The Secrets to Happiness at Work, and it actually launched during the pandemic. And so we are going to re-release that book in May. Again, the title is the same, but the cover is different and the length is double. We added lots of good stuff, but it's still an easy read. The Secrets to Happiness at Work. And I love your quote, make the iron hot. Actually, there's another quote that I really like that's similar. It's inspiration doesn't usually start before the work, but during the work. So sometimes we need to take the first step. We need to put our toe in the water in order to really start to get our sense of moving forward and to get our sense of energy. So that is our quote that says, "Go for it."
Absolutely. Just do it, as Nike says. And Dr. Tracy is always bringing lots of quotations. And that's the time for me to a little reminder to ask you about your life lesson quote. I know that you had a different one. And today, for the purpose of today's show, you prepared a different life lesson quote that is resonating with you very deeply.
Yes, my favorite quote, the one I come back to again and again, is enjoy the little things in life because eventually you will learn they were the big things. And it's Robert Baralt who says that. It's just, to me, it speaks about gratitude. It speaks about being present. It speaks about really appreciating, where we are. I think sometimes we can kind of get ahead of ourselves, right? And we can think about what's next. I'm very much a what's next kind of personality, but really, when we're able to be very, very grateful for where we are and be very present and appreciative of the people around us and the small things, it contributes to our happiness really, really significantly. And I think it contributes to the happiness of the people around us because they know that we're appreciating them. And that's kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal, not just in view of Thanksgiving that is coming very soon, but also it's a big thing when you appreciate little things every day. Make sure that you start your day on a positive note just by thinking about what great things, great life, the great quality of life we have. Because if we compare ourselves to 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have this beautiful location, we didn't have this beautiful way of conversating with you, Dr. Tracy, and having this great conversation today. And we've got great comment from Ernst Maga, another insightful advices from PhD with a great guest, Dr. Tracy. Absolutely, I appreciate Dr. Tracy coming to us this evening in some of the sphere. It's midday here in TCI, and I believe it's also very quite early in the day with you, Dr. Tracy. So, but it's late for us, and we have to wrap up our great conversation. And by bringing another quotation, this time by Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "Women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water." So in life, how are you in hot water? How are you brewing, Dr. Tracy?
How am I growing? I'm growing all the time. I feel like I have more humility than maybe I need sometimes. Uh, I really think we have this moment to figure out how we think differently about work and how we learn about how to connect and reconnect. Things are so upside down and so inside out, and there's so much polarization in the world. And so I think our huge opportunity right now is to stay connected, to stay empathetic, to absolutely focus on, even if we disagree on issues, we absolutely respect and trust each other as humans. And so I think that's our opportunity, is to really, really stay connected with people and to let that take the priority in terms of our day to day and our relationships.
Absolutely, because definitely a job interview is like a hot water. You definitely need to be calm when approaching these times when you're going to an interview, because at the end of the day, we want the happy outcomes for you. Now it's time for me to ask you, what is the number one book you wish you read before you started your career?
Mm. This was a hard one. I've read so many really, really good books, but I really appreciated Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That was a book that I read a long time ago, and it has so stuck with me. And there's so many lessons from the book. But one of the things that I think is so important is the extent to which we can absolutely choose how we respond to our circumstances. We absolutely can't always control the circumstances, but you started us out by saying our positive attitude makes a really big difference. And it's not toxic positivity. We're absolutely aware of what the challenges are, and we're staying attuned to that so we can be responsive and proactive, but also we remind ourselves how empowered we are to find that next new job, or take the initiative to raise our hand for the project, or take the initiative to solve a problem. We were just talking about, sometimes you can be nervous in a job interview and you get into hot water, and, how do you think about that? We can absolutely know that we can energize people when we're nervous about something. It says that we care enough to be nervous, like we're putting energy into something, and that makes us focused. And so when we really, really think about how we choose to frame things, how we choose to think about things, and know that that affects how we interact with others, that I think can be really empowering. So Man's Search for Meaning was a really meaningful one for me.
Meaningful books from Dr. Tracy, meaningful talk with Dr. Tracy. And as we are heading towards the end, Dr. Tracy, we talked about when pandemic is over and you could travel anywhere in the world and have a meeting, private breakfast with anybody in the world. Have you changed your mind? Who would you like to meet in that private environment?
I don't think I've changed my mind. I think I have a really, really long list of people I can always choose from, but I'm a huge fan of Robin Dunbar. Robin Dunbar because of Dunbar's number. He is a sociologist and psychologist who has done tons of research on how many people we can know and how many people we can have relationships with, and has absolutely deeply researched friendship and connection. So I would love to get together with Robin. I interviewed him for an article not too long ago, and he is just an amazing human. And I would love to fly him to me. There's a really cool restaurant in Ann Arbor, Michigan called the Jagged Fork. Cool name. Just kind of a diner, but they've got the most creative menu ever with, like, I don't know, pancakes and waffles and amazing things that sound so delicious, and they are. So I think I'd fly him to me from the UK, and we could have breakfast there.
Fantastic. I would say start small, think big, but also Simon Sinek says dream big, start small, but most of all, start. And that's your opportunity, all of you, to start writing, polishing that CV, that resume, and making sure that you actually give the God opportunity, because as the old joke says, oh God, please let me win that lottery. And God says, well, why don't you buy a ticket first? So that's another opportunity for you to actually find a job. Do this by sending that letter first, rather than wishful thinking about what opportunities may lay ahead of you. Dr. Tracy, it's been a pleasure to have you again with PhD. Hopefully, we can invite you for your book launch, as we know that it's going to be exciting, a very busy time for you. We would be happy to promote it among our viewers, as always. Wonderful. That's great altogether. Thank you, Dr. Tracy. And that's it from episode 122 of PhD Livestream. Thanks to our guest, Dr. Tracy Brower. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on IT and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. Thank you so much to our lovely audience who participated and asked questions. We had great questions and great comments from Mary, Jane, Natalie, Lanto, Erms, Maga. And finally, don't forget to tune in next week. We have a guest scheduled. We are not sure what the topic is yet, but we definitely are going to come to your channels, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 6 p.m. CET, 12 p.m. EST. Wherever you are, you can tune in live or watch the show after it has been released. As always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes, look for something positive each day, even if some days you have to look a little bit harder. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, as Maya Angelou says. And definitely, if you don't like your job, change it. If you can't change your job, change your attitude. Today is your day to hack the future. Hack the positivity you want. Thank you.